so now we're going to go over how to create Azure Logic apps that are going to generate those related Azure Boards work items for us. So to do that, I'm going to pop over into the portal. Now, if you're not already in the portal logged in somewhere, you can just go to portal.azure.com and that will take you here. Yours is going to look different, but you should see the option to create a resource. So we're going to start by creating a resource, and over here in the search, I'm going to type in LogicApp. We'll hit create. And I'm going to create a new resource group that we'll call No Code Project, Demo Project. This is going to be a workflow. I can give it a name here also. We'll call this No Code Demo Project. Consumption is the way we want to go. We're not going to use any log analytics, so we'll leave that as no, and the zone redundancy will be disabled. Let's create. Deployment's in progress. Once it's ready, we can go to the resource. And we're going to start off by creating a logic app that is going to trigger anytime a new work item is created. So if we scroll down here, we're just going to choose this first option here, which is a blank logic app. Now I'm going to search here at the top for Azure DevOps because that's the connector we want to use. And we want to trigger anytime a new work item is created. So I'll choose this, when a work item is created. We'll sign in. I'm going to choose the organization that I'm using, the project name that I just created using my demo generator. I don't need to worry about the team name. I don't need to worry about the assigned to. And then we're going to change this type here from bug to user story. We only care if a user story is the one that's created. We'll leave everything else alone. I'm going to hit save. Next, we need to create some variables that are going to be used. So we'll scroll down here and choose new step. If I'd like, I can search in my connectors for variables. What I want to do is choose this option here to initialize a variable. We're going to call this variable our Template-ParentItemId. We're going to set it as an integer, and we're going to set the initial value as 0. I'm going to come up here and also rename this. Rename this. So it's a little easier to understand from a high level when you're looking at things. We'll save that. Now there's another variable that we're going to need as well. So let's do that in our next step. We can choose variables from our recent list. And we're going to initialize another variable. This time we're going to call it the WorkItemUrlPrefix. And that's going to be a string. And all it is just part of a URL address that when combined with the ID number of the work item can actually take you straight to the work item. And we're going to use that as part of our automation later. I'm going to give this a different name here. So we'll come over and hit rename. And let's save that. Now the next step that we've got to make here is we're going to go out and get the work item children. We're going to go to Azure DevOps, get work item children, choose your organization, choose your project, and in the work item ID, if you click in here and then scroll over to where you see the dynamic content, I'm going to search in the dynamic content for parent, and I'll only find one. And this is the one I want. So I'm going to choose parent here from when a work item is created. So from that very first step that takes place up here, we're capturing the parent ID, and now I can use that later on in this step. So we're going to insert that here, meaning we're going to go get the children of the parent to the work item that was just created. And we're only going to do that on ones that are user stories. So we're going to change this last option here to user stories. And I can even change this if I'd like. Work item children of user stories. But the next thing we want to do is create a loop where we can go through all of the records, all of those children records, and then do something with it. So what we need to do is inside here, let's choose the control option. And then inside the control option, which is one of our built-in connectors, let's go with this for each control. What that's going to allow us to do is go through every one of the records, however many there are, and then take another step. So for each, I'm going to just rename this to for each user story child. When you click in value, just like before over here on the right in the dynamic content window, we can just choose this value here. That's the only one that we have an option to choose. So select that field, click value, it should populate in there. Now the next thing that we're going to do is actually add a condition where it kind of compares something before it takes the next step. So we're going to add an check. It's going to see, does this match some sort of condition? And if so, I want you to continue or I want you to do something else. So in this case, what we want our condition to do is look at the title. So I'm going to click in here and then underneath the dynamic content, I'll type in title. I'm going to go with this first option here. We're going to go get the work item children of user story. So check that title. And if it starts with template, okay, you follow me? If it starts with template, then I want to go do something else. So if it's true, then come in here and take an action. I'm going to hit save just to be safe. But what we want to happen if it's true is we want to take an action and we're going to do something with our variable. What we're going to do is actually set the variable, one of them, this template parent item ID. We're going to set that and we're going to set it. If we scroll over here into our dynamic content and type in ID, we can go with this first ID here, get work item children of user stories. I'm going to rename this here so it's easier to understand, but we're going to set the template parent item ID variable. And that's it. We're done with our condition. We're done with this for loop. Now we're going to do another condition after that one. So let's add a new step here. Just like before, it's a control, a condition. This time we're going to check to see if the parent has a template. If it matches what we're looking for, then we'll continue. And so what we're going to look at here to do a comparison, to check that condition, is let's check to see if the template parent item ID is equal to 0. Now, if you remember way back when we set that or initialized that variable, we set it to 0. So what we're saying here is if it's still set to 0, then what we want you to do under the true condition, we'll go into control again, is we actually just want you to stop running. So we're going to change this to terminate and then set this status to canceled. And I'll hit save. All that's doing is just saying, if it doesn't meet this criteria, if it doesn't match this condition of the template being set to 0, then go ahead and stop. We don't have a template. We don't have anything to do further. So we'll just stop the Logic app or our no-code app from doing anything else. But in every other case, something's going to happen. Now I'm going to rename this condition here. Just something a little easier to understand as well. So let's say condition 2 here is condition if template parent item ID is equal to 0. Just leaving notes for me and anyone else that might be looking at my code, my no code. All right. Now that we've got that, there's just 2 more things that we need to add here. We're going to go and get the children. So we'll go to Azure DevOps, get work item children. Set our organization, set our project, and in the work item ID, we're actually going to go over here and type in our dynamic content. We want the Template-ParentItemId. So we'll choose that. Okay, so we'll click this. That adds it over here to the work item ID. And then the children work item type, we want the task. Okay, those are the things, those are the children that we want to go look at. And if they exist, we're going to copy them. So I'm going to rename this section here to work item task children. Okay. All right. One more section here. So we'll do another new step. We're going to have to loop through our records again. So we'll go with control for each, click in the output from previous step. And then when I come over here, I can choose this value from the top, get work item task children. It's our very first one. We'll go with that one. And then we need to add an action inside of our for each. So I'm going to change this name also to something like for each task. For each task, I want you to go into Azure DevOps and create a work item. Choose our org, choose our project. We're going to create a task. We'll set this to task. And in the title, when I click in title and come over to our dynamic content and type in title over here, I'll go with this first one. We're just copying over the title, and we'll do the same for description. We're copying over this information. From the templates. Now, there's a couple other things we need to add in here. We're going to do iteration path, area path, link URL, and link type. All right, so the iteration path, just like before, we can come over here, go with the first option, area path, likewise, first option. Now the link URL is a little different. Over here, we're using that prefix. Remember the prefix that we made? So we're going to add that. And then right after that, we're adding the ID. Now, this ID isn't the first one that shows up in our list. It's actually going to be this one down here when a work item is created. We're looking at the ID number of the initial one that was created, because that's what we want to create the parent-child relationship with. So we'll go with this one here. You can tell the difference because it's an I and a lowercase d, whereas the rest of them are I uppercase d. We'll choose that one. And in the link type, we'll change this to hierarchy reverse, which is the way that the child and the parent are related to each other. We'll hit save. And that should be pretty much it. So it's time to test it. Let's go back to our project. I go into my no code demo and let's take a look at our backlog. We'll go to our shopping cart here in our product catalog. This is where we've got a template. So in theory, if everything works, I should be able to create a new user story under the product catalog, and it's going to automatically create those 3 tasks for me because that's what's in the template. So let's try it out. User story. Now I'm going to have to manually force this LogicApp to run. So let's just come back in here. I could hit run trigger, but I like to come back one level to the overview. Okay, we're in the overview window now. Overview. And down here on the right, you can see the runs history. So I'm going to click that. So far, there haven't been any runs. But if I come up to the top, click run, trigger, and then run. Now down here in the run history, if I hit refresh, I'll see we've got one that has already run. It's showing succeeded, so we can drill in and take a closer look at it to see what's actually happened. And it's stepped through. Looks like you can see green check marks all the way down through all of the steps, which is positive. And if we go back into our backlog and hit refresh, take a look at the shopping cart under product catalog. Here's my new user story, and here's the 3 tasks that match exactly what's in the template. That's pretty much it for this second section on how to create Azure Logic apps to generate related Azure Boards work items. Now let's move on to the next one.